my immediate reaction was, this shit ain't CS anymore. It's just such a far cry. I don't understand why Brazil is a part of that conversation.
Why come after Brazil?
Exactly. That's my thing. Brazil does not deserve any disrespect at all.
Yeah,
Dream, that is my favorite take of all time for that. I love you.
I want to take this opportunity to welcome to the show head coach of C9 White, previous coach in other titles, of course. It is Dream. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Now, you obviously have been involved now in the Valorant scene for a while. You were an Overwatch coach before that. We can talk about that a little bit later. And you have what I would consider to be not only an ambitious task, but also, quite a unique one, because there aren't too many sort of all-female squads, with the backing of organizations, globally, let alone in North America. So tell us a little bit about, how you came to be part of the C9Y organization, maybe what the mission is, for you and the rest of the team.
Sure. So, I guess a lot of it starts with, I was familiar with Team Magical. During the Overwatch League season last year, there were periods of downtime, like after the big tournaments, right? Like the May Melee, Summer Showdown, stuff like that. And I would use that time to keep up with Valorant. I was really interested in it as a new game. And Team Magical was a team that I was really interested by. Actually, Mel's streams where she would VOD review was actually one of the tools I used to learn about the game before I knew that any of this stuff was going to be happening down the road. But a big reason for things playing out the way they did is my history with Cloud9. I was under the Cloud9 umbrella for my first esports job. I worked for British Hurricane back in 2018. So I had that connection. I was really interested in getting to work with this specific group, and went through the trial process, spent about a week with the team, really enjoyed working with them, really liked how hungry and dedicated everybody was. So I was just really excited to get to work, especially with Cloud9's approach. They were very adamant that they didn't want this to be a team that is, a content-only team or a streamer team, but very much a competitive team.
Nice.
Obviously, that's what we're working towards. We still have progress that we want to make, but that has been our entire goal. And even like in the month of January, for example, when we were grinding at the beginning of the month to get ready for VCT Challengers, we were able to come to Cloud9 and say, hey, can we push back some of this content, some of these sponsored deliverables until after, so we can really focus on this? And they were like, absolutely. We would have you guys boot camping if it weren't for COVID.
Wow.
So they take it very, very seriously, and that's exactly what we want, right? Try not to think too much about the grander scope of things. And as a white dude, obviously, that's not really my place to do. I'm just there to try and support the team as much as possible and advocate for what the players tell me, it matters to them, right?
Awesome. So you're saying there's a lot of pieces around the board to really try to move this Cloud9 White forward to where it needs to be or where you want it to be. So what's your role specifically with now? Because if I understand correctly, you also have Moonchopper that supports you in the squad as well. So explain to me about each of your roles here and how it supports the Cloud9 White roster.
Sure. So it's very collaborative, absolutely. But I mean, title-wise, I'm the head coach and he's the strategic coach.
Okay.
So that kind of informs some of the stuff, but we really do help each other a lot. Again, it's very back and forth. We're collaborative with the players as well. I just think that's an approach you should have in especially in a new game. Like, the players are just going to know so much compared to, a game that's been out for a long time that the coaches can study. The players' hours in the game just matter a lot. But I love working with Moon, man. I've worked with a bunch of coaches. He's fucking great. Like, if I made a laundry list of like what you want out of a coach, like it's Moon.
That's awesome.
He's super professional, super hardworking, really understanding, always patient. Just that I could just go on and on. I really, really love working with him, and I did come kind of directly over from Overwatch, so he did a lot of teaching me the game, as did other players. So they've all been super helpful in that way. On the day to day, I focus mostly on like our comms in and out of game, our like emotional roles within the team, like who's going to be the leader, who's going to be the hype person, who's going to be like the emotional stabilizer, right? Make sure everyone knows that they have a role to play in that way. Make sure we're always on track, we're efficient with our time, we have goals, etc. And Moon is doing a lot of the nitty gritties. What are our comps? What do our defaults look like? Another big thing that he does, though, is our counter-stratting. He is very, very good at counter-stratting and identifying reads and bad tendencies in other teams. And that's a big part of our more high-profile wins, like Renegades and E United. He deserves, credit for how well prepared we were as a team going into those matches.
Interesting. Actually, sorry guys, I'm going to chime in with another question based on what Dream was just saying, because you were mentioning here, Moon, that talks a lot about counter-stratting, right? And I have a similar debate or discussion with other people inside the scene of like, when you have a composition in a team, we tend to like just want to play our own comp versus the other team, right? More than like anti-stratting the team. So is there in terms of counter-stratting, is it okay, well, Sentinels plays this way, we should use this composition against them based on what they're going to use? Or is it more like, this is our composition right now, how can this type of composition anti-strat, or how can we anti-strat the playstyle of Sentinels? Does it make sense how I'm asking that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a give and take, right? Like, we want to play our game. We don't want to dictate and like try and totally change play styles or totally change compositions just based on some perceived weakness that we see in the enemy team, because they might run a different strat. They might play a different comp, and we're not going to know that until the match, right? So we don't want to over lean on it. The kinds of things that we look at, like we still have our overall play style or whatever our overall goals are that we're working on at that time. Like, do we want to take more early round map control, right? If that's what we're working on, we'll probably do that more in our matches. But the biggest thing that we focus on is like obvious tells in their default, right? So if they, every time that they smoke, long C on Haven, we know that they're stalling on C, they're not pushing, and they're going to go for A control, right? And we know we can stack A if they do that. Or if they drone mid, we know that's because they're coming back C, so we can rotate, right? We look for tells like that are really, really big. And then also really useful things are how they tend to use their ultimates. Because a lot of teams don't have a big playbook on how they want to use their ults. So a lot of times, if you see that they have a Raze ult, they only have one or two spots that they usually take their Raze ult to. So in the first 30 seconds of the round, we're ready. These are the spots they like to Raze ult. Maybe they improv and do it late in the round, but if we can be prepared for those like big set plays they tend to have, makes it very easy to deal with.
Interesting.
Hey, Dream, ever since I saw you guys last time on the main stream, you played against Demon Time and I was a loss. But when it comes to coaching this Cloud9 team after losses like that, and as you're on the upward trend, and y'all are making a statement, man, y'all are damn good, right? What is your personal biggest challenge at the moment that you're going through to help get this team to where they need to be?
Sure. So the biggest challenge for me right now, and I think for the team as a whole, is to improve our consistency. I think we have good peaks, but we're not able to like lower that distance, right? The delta is really big between our best performances and our worst performances.
High amplitude, you might say.
Exactly. The peak and the trough, right? But the biggest thing right now is that a lot of our players don't really have a ton of competitive experience, right? Prior to being on this team, the teams they were on were kind of like friend groups or less formal things, like maybe just something you set up for a local LAN, you play together for like a week and you're not a serious team. So helping develop those skills of just being in a team, being a good teammate, and learning what kind of player you are and how to like fix, what your weaknesses are versus amplify your strengths is kind of what we're working on because all the players are different, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
finding out what are the things that trigger you to have a worse performance. Okay, so that's like one step, and then another one is when you start having that bad performance, how can we identify that that's happening in the moment, not after it's become an issue, and then are there other things you can focus on? Like if it's an aim thing, can you focus on your comms and your utility usage? Or if it's like a you stop calming, what can we do to make it easier for you to start up again, right?
Yeah.
So everyone has their own individual areas that need to
Yes.
improve for us to bring up that floor to help our consistency. So that's really where our focus is right now. Just getting
Okay.
lots of reps in scrims, lots of reps in tournaments, because I mean, compared to a lot of other players that we're competing against, our players just have a lot less overall competitive experience.
Now,
I like that.
there's obviously something that a little ironic about a bunch of blokes talking about VCT game changers, but I've got you
Sure.
here, and I do want to take this opportunity to discuss it because you as a roster have been sort of battling it out regardless of VCT existing or not. You have been sort of competing in whatever stages possible. What's the sort of the attitude towards it from from your team, and does it affect you to a great degree, do you feel? I'd like to know what your thoughts are, at least as a representative right now for C9W, even if not your personal opinion. Either one is fine.
Sure. Well, I mean, I've spoken, like when it got announced, the team talked about it. We were super pumped about it. I think we're all pretty much on the same page that it's just really, really good for the scene.
Mhm.
Similar things to what you guys were saying earlier. It's just only a benefit, right? As far as how it will impact us specifically, we're really excited that that means that there's going to be more teams getting resources, both from organizations, but also from these tournaments. Exposure, all that stuff is really, really good for the scene. I mean, we expect to win the event this month in March. We're not going to settle for anything less than a win.
Nice.
But we're super excited for the scene to continue growing. I can say that over the last several months, there have been a good handful of orgs that have reached out to players on our team to say, "Hey, we're interested in starting a women's roster. Can you point us towards some players or some communities where we can go do some scouting?" There are a lot of orgs that are interested right now, and I imagine that with this announcement, they've gotten significantly more interested.
Sure.
So I am definitely expecting multiple signings, at least here in NA, and that maybe we can get to the point where we're rivaling where Brazil looks right now, where they have a half dozen major orgs that also have women's teams.
Mhm.
And I would also like to see a Game Changers tournament in Brazil, like for that reason, right?
Yes.
But at least in the short term for this event, we are going to show up, compete, and try and take it home. But we're really happy just as a group with what this means for the scene as a whole. As you guys showed Alexis's tweet earlier, these tournaments matter a lot and they do make a big difference. And we're all super excited to see Riot take what is really some leading steps in esports in how to integrate and encourage women to participate more.
Yeah, it's actually pretty awesome. And you were just mentioning before, in terms of like inconsistency and stuff that you're trying to address within the team, or how to fix maybe small mistakes to try to get where you want to be with C9W. I wanted to tie back that question to the inconsistency overall, because there was a tweet that came out from KP maybe about 2 months ago that talked about like maybe, sorry? I love to talk about this all the time. Yeah.
Talk about this.
I always talk about this because there's only 13 rounds or 12 rounds per half rather. And sometimes we talked about like the RNG of like the stingers, the RNG of the frenzies, or just the momentum swing of how like there's never a team that's going to be like always at the top. When you're looking at Counterstrike, you're like, okay, well, there's a potential it's always going to be Na'Vi at the top right now because it's simple, or because it's going to be Vitality that's going to be consistently winning because they have Zaiwu or Ziwu. In Valorant, there's never a team that you can actually crown them as like the consistent number one team for any region right now. So except for Korea, of course. But is there a reason why outside of like players' performances, is there anything within the game that adds to that randomness to these results, or the consistency or inconsistency?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, like I talked about, I don't think our inconsistencies issues are like indicative of maybe what top teams are going through or what would be like a greater trend in the scene. But as far as the overall trend, I definitely think the Frenzy Stinger meta did make things feel a little inconsistent and a little RNG because of how important pistols became,
Yeah.
right, in an MR12 format, but then also how many times you're buying a Stinger and just running it. And that is just inherently a little RNG, right? You know, if you're doing a Stinger half armor by 4 rounds in a half, that's pretty wild. So I'm glad that's been addressed. But honestly, I think overall, consistency wise, I don't think the game is inconsistent or that the results are inconsistent. Like if we're looking at, like, a lot of people started talking about that around the Frenzy Stinger meta, but also started talking about like teams like LG or Immortals performing better. I think they just got better. Like I don't
agree.
think it's that other teams are inconsistent. I think a lot of it is that those first strike VODs got studied real hard, man, real hard. So Sentinels needed to adapt, right? They've been able to adapt, which is great. They're not getting read the same way as much. FNS did have some of those reads on Haven, but they're getting better at changing things up. TSM starting to change things up, starting to look better and look like they might actually be able to qualify, right? What's another team that's fallen off a little bit? T1, but they're doing a rebuild, right? So the big and 100 Thieves, they get studied and they don't get to practice and they don't get to come up with a bunch of new strats because of Nitro's absence. So they're trying to make up ground late. So I really think it's more that there's a ton of really talented, really hungry players getting better all the time, new stars, like superstar level talents coming out all the time. And it's more that if you're at the top, it's never by much because of how much everyone else is working. And you just always know there's people hot on your heels, right? So I think that the conversation is framed by the people at the top talking about it being inconsistent, but I would rather look at it from the perspective of the people on the come up that are earning their spot, in my opinion.
Yeah, Dream, that is my favorite take of all time for that. I love you.
It's nice to see someone not projecting, I guess.
That is so... Thank you.
Well, it's easy when I'm not one of the top teams that has a reason to be like super salty about like I'm losing to a team I shouldn't lose to, right?
Yeah. Even Shazam walked it back a little bit though as well. I know when he spoke about that.
I really appreciated how he talked about that because I do think that the community and social media ran with it way further than he ever intended. And it turned into something that he clearly didn't mean. I understand why it got misinterpreted, but it also got really had some legs there.
Well, why is it number 1 on Reddit? That was too much for me. like talking about choosing servers and such. I mean, that's a whole different discussion. Listen, I'm sure you have been, looking with great interest at Astra, and already you're probably thinking about the kind of impact that agent can have in the game. Can you share with us some initial thoughts from yourself, or maybe how the team has been discussing how she might be employed in pro play in the future?
Sure. So just like a lot of other teams, we had one player that was invited to test early. So we had a little bit of info. Obviously, when you're in a server by yourself, you can only test so much stuff. But my immediate reaction was, this shit ain't CS anymore. It's just such a far cry. And it also makes me think of Yoru, right? Where Yoru, if he had worked, would have also very heavily changed how we default, how we gain info, how reliable info is, right? All sorts of stuff. So I think that this is a sign that Riot is very willing to do some wild design shit, which I am super down for. I have like some small nitpicky stuff, like some of the interactions could be a little more intuitive, or like I feel like having a smoke be 2 different colors is really annoying for like crosshair colors and colorblind people and shit. So just like small nitpicky stuff, but overall, love the design, think it's super interesting. And I also really like the way they've given her some sort of interesting inherent weaknesses. So in one element of that is like, reminds me of Sky, for example, where all of her abilities, it takes like 3 years to pull your gun out after you use an ability, right? You are not, if you're getting run at, just keep your gun out. You know, don't use abilities, right? And Astra, it's to an even greater degree, right? Going into her form to throw down a star, then come out of that form, then there's a little delay before you can pop the star, and it's like, it is not easy to just be super reactive. The way with an Omen, you're just like, I'm blinding now. Like, you're running at me, I'm just blinding, I'm fighting. She doesn't have that ability, right? So that's an interesting weakness. And then she has way less one-ways that she can do than Omen and Brim, right? She can't do like the one-way on Ascent A main for some reason on that wall. You can't place stars on some walls. You can't place them on roofs. You can't place them in some of the doors. It's basically only on very obvious boxes and like map geometry. Her smokes are also shorter. They're not as tall. So like when you're trying to smoke long C on Haven and there's someone on top of the box opping, they're going to be able to see you.
Yeah.
So I like stuff like that where the advantages and disadvantages are kind of baked into the kit and they're not just numbers. I really, really like that. This, you know, I think she seems a little strong. I think that she could work on her own or potentially with an Omen or a Brim so that you can free up her utility a little bit more. I think her kit is maybe too cheap. Maybe limit her to 4 stars or only give her 1 for free every round, something like that. But overall, as far as what it points to for the game and Riot's design philosophy, super, super happy with it.
I love it.
So, so just theory crafting again, because you're saying that she could play alongside another smoker, like an Omen, so that she could actually free up her kit. Then, are you thinking of teams, for example, like TSM that went Sentinel-less until now the Open Qualifiers 3, or a TSM that went double smokes in Open Qualifiers number 2, would actually benefit of this type of agent and playstyle? And what type of playstyle does it fit into as well as a player?
Sure. So I think because she isn't that good at playing reactively or like really fast, if people are making plays, she does need more of that setup time. So having other characters that are good at controlling space and controlling the map, it just like, it snowballs, it synergizes together, right? So having another smoker that can take up space, really good. Having strong info characters like a Sova. I mean, obviously you almost always want to run Sova, but some people are swapping out to Sky instead. I don't think that this hero is a hero where you would do that. I think it's much more about being able to be very defaulty on T side, because again, she has a hard time like going really fast in some of these trades. You either kind of are going to pop your cooldowns and your stars fast off rip and just give it to him, right? Or play really defaulty on T side, because her utility can be used to break pressure points so easily and force you to use multiple pieces of utility to kind of take the space back, right? So if you want to play slow and hit in the late round, she's going to be very, very good at that. And then on T side or on CT side, feels like a cross between a smoker and a sentinel with how much she can kind of lock down and anchor a site. I feel like her CT side is going to be really, really strong.
Now, I have a question. There's a lot of Valorant that's happening all around, and it is really hard to follow all of it. You got NA, you got EU. I love Korea. Shout out to Tasteoses, right? But Brazil, Dream, you keep an eye on Brazil. How do you feel about that, man?
So, I mean, I really like watching Brazil. I try and watch EU, NA, and Brazil primarily. I catch some Korean matches, obviously.
No one can watch it all, bro. It's okay.
Yeah,
can't watch it all.
Especially when I gotta be in scrims and stuff. It's rough. You gotta pick and choose. But I think that Brazil is a really, really exciting region right now. I think that they perform at a high level. They have a unique play style. They definitely have the viewership numbers. There's been some drama around the community about the allocation of the Masters slots. I'm not going to pretend like I understand the reason for EMEA being the combination of CIS, Turkey, and EU. I've heard people in that region talk about how separating it would affect CIS, would affect Turkey, whether it's good or bad. I don't really understand the decision behind that, but I definitely feel like 4 slots for that entire region, or 2 slots rather, is not enough. I would rather see something like 4 slots.
I like this take.
I think that would be a lot better, but I don't understand why Brazil is a part of that conversation.
Why come after Brazil here?
Exactly. That's my thing. Brazil does not deserve any disrespect at all. I would have loved. Obviously, COVID limits what we can do. There could be a million reasons why there was only 10 teams, even though it feels kind of obvious that it's got to be COVID or logistically like related. I would love for Riot to just give a small statement on it so we can just kind of wash our hands of it and be done with that. But certainly, I think that we want as many slots as possible, not just for the major regions that deserve to be able to send these teams that are really like working hard to prove things, and we're trying to get more sponsors involved in those major regions, right? But also the minor regions. And if we were able to have a 16 team bracket, right, we could give what, in my opinion, the 3 major regions, EU, NA, and Brazil could all get 3 representatives. We could get the 4 individual regions that are getting representatives now could still get them. You could give CIS and Turkey their own representatives, and India. I would also love to see start to have more support as well. I think that Valorant's in a great position to be a truly global esport and bring a lot of these regions that have been kind of passed over before more into the spotlight, and we can get the most talented, best players from all around the world playing this game.
Well, hey, Dream, what state you live in, man?
I live in Atlanta right now, but I'm from Florida originally.
Oh, so you down south? So you closer to Latin America than all of us, man? Do you think? Do you honestly think? Because I was thinking about it. Yo, Uber chill. I was thinking about it. Do you think that Brazil as a region is underrated outside of what we know in NA? Because I know in the games that I've been in, Latin America and Brazil are the biggest.
And you're being asked this question because you're geographically proximate to that region.
You're closer. So you have a connection that we don't have. You're right there, man.
I would say, I mean,
California, what's your point? Oh my God.
We do scrim some of the Latin American North teams.
Okay.
We scrim,
how are they?
We scrim LDM. We scrim Laser Clan. I would say, and those are like some of the better teams in Latin America North. We don't scrim Latin America South. We don't scrim Brazil. There's too much of a ping issue. But the good Latin America North teams do scrim a lot of NA teams. They're really competitive around the tier 2 level, right? The top of tier 2, bottom of tier 1 level. The Latin America North teams. As far as the Brazilian scene, I mean, obviously they're underrated. I definitely understand why. There's not a lot of ease of access for a lot of people in NA, and obviously we're very focused on ourselves. A lot of NA doesn't watch very much EU either, and EU gets underrated by NA. It's not a mysterious phenomenon. We just have to, like, for once in our lives, just be like, okay, maybe the other regions are good. NA is just super excited to be good at an esport, though. That's really what
exactly.
It is.
Well, honestly,
but Brazil is Portuguese in A, though. Go ahead.
They say good at an esports, but how the fuck do they know? We haven't had international competition yet. This could be if the dream comes crashing down again, I'm.
Can you imagine?
I've seen this happen. Dream. You're an Overwatch coach, mate. I mean, we got to watch the decline of North America in at least one esports scene in the past, bro. I know who was on your team, mate. I know what you dealt with, man.
No, man. I am actually one of those people that live on like literally cloud 9, where like NA is the best right now in the world. And when I want to talk about Brazilian Valorant versus the North American one, because people have been asking me about the playstyle, and I've watched a bit of Gamelanders and Furia, and I still feel that their unique aggressive playstyle is still very similar to somebody like a team like Immortals or a team like Sentinels if they want to rush very fast. So what actually characterizes Brazil to be that more aggressive than we are here in NA?
So the thing is that the aggressive teams in NA, right, or teams that don't play very defaulty, they play fast, they hit sites.
Yeah.
The difference is there's a big thing in Brazil where you have your step 0, like where everyone starts at the start of the round, your step 1, step 2 of your default, but they aren't just hitting sites fast, they're just defaulting at the fucking speed of light.
Everyone goes, and the team's more well-rounded.
It's insane. It's so much pressure where, usually what's going to happen is, I'm going to use some utility like a raise nade or a boom bot for some control on an extremity early in the round, right? And then you're going to wait a couple seconds. You're going to push back in with some info with like a dart or a drone. They're just instantly swinging, like with 2 people. As soon as the nade or the boom bot is gone, they just double swing it. They're like, we don't have to use utility. If you're here, you're just going to be dead now. And then as soon as we get that kill, even if it gets traded, we're instantly popping utility on the site and we're going. So it's not like it's just a off rip. We're popping these smokes. We're omen blinding. We're flashing. And it's just the 5 steps are just the same no matter what the enemy team is doing. It's a giant branching decision tree, and they're just going at the speed of light.
Even the supports. I just love that
this cultural vivacity of Brazilian people permeates the way that they play.
Yes.
I've seen it in Battlefield as well. Back when I used to cast Battlefield, like Brazil were unknown, underrated, and they came in and they just ran at the speed of light, mechanical gods, and just mowed over every other team. Everyone's like, they play too fast. You're like, I can't handle this. Like, it's just a completely different approach to the game. And yeah, like I've seen it happen now in so many different games that I think there is really
stupid, yo.
I mean,
they literally jump out windows, Uber. They all jump out of windows spraying for you, Uber. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. Hey, Dream, thank you so much for your time so far. Stick around because we're going to talk, obviously, a bunch about some of what we saw in the NA VCT. We've got some time to discuss that. But again, I just wanted to take this moment to thank you for some of your insights, and we can't wait to see what C9 White is going to be delivering over the months to come, man. There's plenty of exciting stuff.